As a young boy, I often found myself hesitant to look in the mirror because I was reminded of a doctor who once told me that I had three potential outcomes in life. He said that I would end up in jail, hooked on drugs, and most likely dead. But one day I had to face myself when a teacher gave us an assignment. As she posed the question, who in your life inspires you, and who would you like to be like, and why? Now, most of these kids seem to have a person in mind as they uttered various names. My best friend named Chris said he wanted to be like his dad. But I didn't have an answer that day because people that I desired to be like escaped me. I didn't know my parents, my brothers and sisters, aunts or uncles. But this question often haunted me. Perhaps I figured that one day I would have an answer. And that day came to pass when I stood in the mirror and I asked myself, who could I be like? Who inspires me to be my best? And that answer was right there in front of me. It was my CASA worker, Molly. Now, for anyone to understand how I decided to model myself after her, it is imperative that I take you through my journey of the foster care system. So as I speak tonight, I would love for you to pay attention to the presentations on the side. At 6:15 a.m. on June 4th, 1983, in Dallas, Texas, I was brought into the world by Brenda and Jack McCord, my drug and alcoholic addicted parents. According to my birth records, my mother was intoxicated while she was in labor with me. CPS was heavily involved in our daily lives as they received concerns and intake reports regarding our overall welfare. The intakes came from relatives, concerned neighbors, and school officials. These reports contain highly disturbing information detailing instances where my oldest siblings were going to school without adequate clothing and concerns about their bodily hygiene. That my oldest sister was digging through the trash can trying to find food to feed her younger siblings. Eventually, an investigation was opened, and my caseworker cited major concerns for our youngest brother, who was severely underweight and was diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome. In March of 1985, at only 18 months old, my siblings and I were removed from my birth parents' home, and as a result of neglect and suspicion of physical and sexual abuse. At the time of the removal, according to the Department of Child Protective Services, I became number 85-927-W304. And much like a prison inmate, this number became my sole identity. All of my siblings and I were separated and placed in various homes and had infrequent visits with one another. Now, who was protecting the heart of my oldest sister, Tricia, who was at 8 years old, who was taking on the responsibilities of a parent, nurturing and providing and caring for her younger brothers? This agency that vowed to serve and to protect vulnerable and abused children failed to consider the short-term and long-term effect of splitting up a group of siblings where all they had and all they ever knew was one another. But thankfully, as time wore on, my three oldest siblings were adopted, and I passed through 6 different foster homes until I was eligible for adoption at the age of 5. At 4 years old, My caseworker explained to me that the idea of adoption was rooted in permanency and having a dependable family that would love, nurture, and provide comfort and safety along with my basic needs. But more important than that, I can experience the love of having two parents and a family to call my own. So one day I was told of a family that showed interest in adopting me. Now, imagine my excitement, but also imagine my confusion. I would have a mother and a father and two sisters, and my heart longed for my own siblings. And I was expected to quickly forget all that I knew and simply accept this new prospective family. Now pay attention to this picture. In June of 1988, I was formally adopted by the Jordan family in Houston, Texas. I would love to tell each of you that this was my new home forever. However, an unfortunate series of events transpired that no child should experience in their lifetime. The Jordans did not love me, but they used me as a public accessory to brag about their own goodwill. As a child, I was in the foster care system at a young age. It would be fair to assess that I did not know how to properly navigate the system. My records show that I displayed several behavioral problems and had multiple mental disorders. I was diagnosed with early delayed development with a IQ range of 70 to 100. The range border lining mild mental retardation. See, to my family, I was unmanageable. My behavior was described as bizarre, and as a result of my troubles, I wet the bed day and night, and the family became disconcerted, and the daily abuse began. I was isolated. For family events, I was put in dark rooms to be alone, and also in closets. I was punished consistently for soiling the bed, and being told to scrub my bed and my sheets every day. To avoid such punishments and abuse, I tried to stay up all night long as I could, in hopes not to wet the bed. But even so, I was so afraid of the dark. I was yelled at. I was hit over behaviors that I could not control. Finally, one day, my adoptive mother had enough of me, and she put me in a trash bag and attempted to put me in the attic. It was there that my first horrific event it was here that my first experience with an adoptive family came to an end. Eventually, I was given back to CPS because the Jordans no longer wished to care and provide for me. In foster care, I was placed in homes that were promised to be therapeutic, yet these families continued to mistreat me. For instance, one foster family beat me daily for wetting the bed and my behavior. They made me sleep in the bathtub. They cursed at me and told me that I was worthless. I lashed out with unpredictable behavior. I threw puppies against the wall and threw them in ceiling fans. I displayed violent and impulsive behaviors. This was only met with more abuse and punishment. I was frequently whipped with thick extension cords and locked in closets for long periods of time. These families taunted and mocked me for missing my parents. They consistently reiterated that my mother and father did not love me and that they were junkies, and if they had a choice, I would not even be living in their home. I was treated poorly and unfair compared to their own biological children, who were given special privileges. I quickly became very antisocial, and I was placed on high doses of medication for anxiety and severe depression. I was heavily medicated to modify my disruptive behavior, and to suppress the true emotions that came with my trauma. See, during my childhood, the trending theme was that I was a bad child, one that was undeserving. And as those who wrote me off, my attitude became apathetic. I became belligerent, an aggressive child, violent towards others, uncooperative, and at times suicidal. But all along, my heart was in distress, feeling that love had forsaken me, as well as those that were supposed to protect me. I gave up on myself. A learned behavior which I mimicked from negative individuals who surrounded me. I fell into an abyss of despair and would be evident to some that Jackie Jo Lee would not amount to anything. See, nothing is more devastating than a loss after a loss. And from the travels of going home to home, along the way you lose your dignity, you lose your identity, you lose your self-worth, and even love, leaving you with only a trash bag with tangible items that might not be yours. Feeling that life had no place for me, I tried to take my own life by intentionally overdosing on medication. For my surprise, I survived. And from the doctor's perspective, someone was looking out for me. So I know that y'all are sitting back and like, how in the world is he standing up on this stage? Well, I would like to tell y'all I'm something like Superman. I was strong. I didn't let that stuff get to me. I didn't let those barriers keep me from pursuing a good life. But that was not the case. What I did have was heroes, but they were not uniformed with spandex or a cape, but individuals within my community who understood the needs of children that were in my situation and took actions in hopes to ensure their success. While I was in care, I was given a CASA, a court-appointed special advocate, a volunteer named Molly. Now, I didn't think much of Molly when the first time that we met because I was so used to people freely walking in and out of my life. But something was different about this woman. Each time she came to visit me, she would smile profusely as though my presence brought her joy. She made my existence known to the court by making suggestions and recommendations on my behalf. Over time, she made a significant difference in my life by proving herself to be the most consistent and present during the most difficult years of my life. When I became careless, she became fearless. When I had no fight left, she stood as a presence of hope, coaching me along the way. She was so kind that I often doubted that I was deserving of her. And so at night, on the days that I saw her in my prayers, I thank God for giving me such a good friend. As our relationship grew, she moved effortlessly through my swamps of uncanny emotions. See, one of my greatest memories of Molly was asking her, "Why do you keep on visiting me when I'm such a bad boy?" She replied, "You're the most amazing little boy I know. You're so brave, and more than anything, I love you, and I refuse to give up on you." In a time when people in the world seemed to frown upon me, Molly celebrated my victories, whether they were great or small. When life felt like it was spiraling out of control, Molly gave me wisdom that would cushion me from hard falls. When people dismissed my greatest attributes, Molly was as the moon at night that highlighted the beauties of my soul. I felt like I was the luckiest little boy in the world, even so that I and the other children in the home would debate and fight over who had the best CASA. And I usually won. because she gave us money. Don't tell nobody. Not only did she champion me, but she injected her love in the deadest places of my heart, re-erecting the primitive joys that every child should experience. She was my place of refuge. In her arms, I was sheltered from the pains of the world. Ultimately, she was a warrior who voluntarily decided to fight alongside of me, all for the sake of providing me a hopeful future. At a time that I didn't understand, Molly would repeatedly say, your resilient spirit will light up anything. Although at 11 years old, we departed our ways, Molly never left without giving me a bit of herself. And each time that I have an opportunity to advocate on behalf of a child, I am also inspired to leave a trail of hope in the heart of those who hear my voice. She was my advocate for 6 years. There was a woman who worked for Child Protective Services in the adoption unit. And as she was walking to her office one day, there were pictures on the walls of children who needed to be adopted. As she walked by, she saw a picture of me at the age of 10, and instantly in her heart, she knew I was her child. She inquired about me to her coworkers, and many of them taunted and mocked her. They told her she was crazy to want to adopt me because I looked so bad on paper. Well, one day, this woman and my world collided. I was sent to her office because I could not attend a CPS adoption interview. When I walked into her office, when she looked up, she ran to me in tears, hugging me, kissing me, and stated that she's always wanted to adopt me. Now, my initial thought was, she is crazy. And she's even crazier to want to adopt me. A month later, I had received news that that crazy lady quit her job to pursue my adoption. 14 homes later, at the age of 13, I was adopted once again. And Alicia Davis is with me today. Would you stand up? See, this perfect stranger understood that these perfect strangers understood that I was in need. And more so, despite all the negative things they heard and read about me, they saw that I had potential. They also understood that if this child was given a chance and given the right resources, not only could I thrive, but also succeed and be a functional member of society. I would like to say that I am completely different than I was when I was a child. I'm very blessed. And over the years, I have learned to lift my shoulders. I've learned to stand up within myself. I have learned that I am able to be of good service to others. I have not allowed the trauma of my past to withhold my kind spirit, but I have allowed my story to produce hope and encouragement for others. I stand before you as a leader in my community. I will be graduating May 16th, 2015. Yes. Yes. Yeah. And for those who are curious, a bachelor's of social work. Yeah. I'm the founder and former president of a award-winning organization at the University of North Texas called PUSH, an acronym for Persevere Until Success Happens, that supports and encourages foster care alumni and youth in the system to seek out education. This past semester, I was the recipient of the William A. Luker Award and Scholarship for Student Involvement. I am now working at Cumberland Presbyterian Children's Home, working with children who were in the same situation as me, showing them and being an example of what success can be like, the possibilities and outcomes when you just work hard and get around good people. I am now an example to the world of why we should never, ever give up on children. See, my experiences have never left me, and there isn't a day that goes by that I don't relive the memories of my past. But that's why I'm here today. My haunting memories are an inspiration to help others, so I have to share my story. In conclusion, when peace has been shattered and when the very foundation of life has been corroded by instability and fear, how do we reconcile all that has been lost and damaged? The best remedy that was demonstrated to me was the planting of a seed of hope and displaying love in its purest form. Let my testimony speak volumes to those who are present today, that the impact of having a CASA is life-changing, but also could be life-saving. Because of my personal endeavors with CASA, I now serve as a positive example by revising the standards of success in youth who have faced similar situations as myself. CASA has played a vast part in my hopefulness and my will to display an energy that is enthusiastic in spirit despite the unfortunate circumstances. Tonight, I hope that I have demonstrated the possible outcomes, and I'll say it again. Tonight, I hope that I have demonstrated the possible outcomes when community members collaboratively invest in our youth, making an obligation to restore hope and be a voice for children who have been muted by unprecedented events in life. The greatest gift my CASA gave me was this simple message that I often find myself repeating. It only takes one person, just one, to effectively make a difference in a child's life. So tonight I challenge each of you to be that one and continue to show your support through your donations, through your time, to help children of St. Louis, Missouri. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And please give yourself a round of applause. Pat yourselves on the back. Stand tall and be proud. Because of your faithful contributions to CASA, you're changing lives. You are the light that shines in the darkest hours of abused and neglected children.